Welcome to Constructing the Carolinas, the show where we explore how communities across North Carolina are growing, innovating, and preparing for tomorrow. We're brought to you by Barnhill, constructing the Carolinas since 1949. I'm your host, Valerie Bono, Director of Business Development. On today's episode, I'm excited to welcome Mike Fox, President of the Piedmont Triad Partnership and attorney at Tuggle Duggins, plus a key leader of the Carolina Core Initiative. The Carolina Core spans a thriving corridor between Charlotte and Raleigh, and it's redefining what economic development can look like across North Carolina. We'll talk about how the region is embracing advanced manufacturing, attracting cutting-edge industries, building a strong, diverse workforce, and ensuring that every corner of our state shares in the success. If you're curious about what makes the Carolina Core so special and why companies like Toyota, Wolfspeed, and HondaJet are choosing to invest here, this is the conversation you won't want to miss. To start, I asked Mike what prompted the Piedmont Triad Partnership.
In the Triad in particular, during the late 90s, early 2000s, we lost a lot of jobs to our three anchor historical job producers. In Winston, it was tobacco. In High Point, it was furniture, and in Greensboro, it was textiles. And all of those industries lost a lot of jobs overseas during that time frame. So that's really when the push became, okay, how do we rebuild this economy for the future? And so out of that, a regional vision was brought forth, and that's what the Piedmont Triad Partnership proposes or advocates for. And we've really had a lot of success in terms of we've got about 16 counties that are in what we call the Carolina Core, and that's our marketing name for it because it's central to North Carolina. It's between Charlotte and Raleigh. It's pretty much everything between Charlotte and Raleigh along 421 from pretty much Wilkesboro down to Fayetteville. And so it is the core of North Carolina. And those economic development professionals and those local chambers all work together to market the region, and they've all adopted that branding. And when we go visit site selectors, they go together, and somebody might say, well, I don't really have what you're looking for here, but Valerie does, in the neighboring county, and talk to her. So it really has worked well.
Yeah, it works well. And I love that everybody's on the same page and they're sharing the same vision. I know we were both recently at the fall NCEDA conference, yes, and there was some talk with the Carolina Core and sharing what it is doing in our region and how it's shaping the economy overall.
Yeah, it really became clear to us that, for our whole state needs to be successful. Everyone needs to have an opportunity to be successful in our state. And for our state to be successful, it can't just be Raleigh and Charlotte that has economic success. Other parts of the state, what you traditionally call the Triad, the Carolina Core, the mountains, the coast, and the more rural areas as well. There needs to be economic development in all of those areas. It's not going to be the same in all the areas, but all of North Carolina deserves to prosper.
No, I've heard people talk about the Carolina Core, and we may be sitting here 20 years from now looking back and say, wow, it's almost as if we're one city, right? Where Charlotte is connected to Raleigh and everything in between. But that's pretty fascinating to think about.
Oh, I think that will definitely happen. As a matter of fact, even 15 years ago, I was at a presentation and a demographer essentially predicted that Atlanta to D.C. would be one large urban area, not the same city, but it would be hard to tell when you were leaving one area and going to another, basically the corridor along 85.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah. And if you look at the map, they're all kind of growing together.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's fascinating is look at a map or a photo from space at night of the lights, and you can see that line along 85.
Oh, that's fascinating. I'll have to do that.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about workforce and economic engine, all that's in between. So the Carolina Core is described as North Carolina's next big economic engine. Can you tell us what makes this region so special when it comes to workforce development specifically?
So as mentioned earlier, we have a great history of manufacturing in that area with the furniture, the tobaccos, and the textiles. And so manufacturing, those were good jobs where folks you didn't need a college education necessarily. If folks want to get a college education, that's great, but you didn't need a college education to be able to support your family, send your kids to college if you wanted to. And those jobs became much harder to find once those industries left. So what we've really tried to do is reinvent ourselves in terms of advanced manufacturing, which jobs require more skills, not necessarily a college degree, but usually some community college work or specialized training. Those jobs pay more. They typically have great benefits. And because we have that workforce that views those as good jobs and we have a growing workforce in our area, we've been able to attract companies like Toyota and Wolfspeed and HondaJet, who view really the workforce as one of the number one things they look at.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had Andrew Gardner with the community college system on our podcast, and he's talked about some of the successes that are happening, in the Carolina core with the community college system and all of the workforce opportunities that are being led by the various community colleges in partnership with some of these business entities like Toyota.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're really fortunate in North Carolina. And but when I say fortunate, I don't mean to say it happened by accident. It was thoughtful, wise leadership over hundreds of years to have a great education system all the way from our primary schools through high school, which the Constitution, our state Constitution says that everyone's entitled to a good public education, to some of the best community college systems in the world. I would argue the best public university system in the country, and then some amazing private universities as well. I mean, we're really blessed in North Carolina with that, and I think that's one of our great advantages, because while a lot of kids grow up in North Carolina and they go to one of these schools, there's a lot of kids come from other states that go to these schools and they realize, God, this is a great place to live, and so I'm going to stay here. So
absolutely.
That helps us with that workforce.
It really does. And I think that's another reason why we continue to see a lot of companies move to our state, right? They've got the workforce, the education, the opportunities, the cost of living.
And not just company, people.
Yes.
I mean, we're the third fastest growing state behind Florida and Texas. And we just passed Georgia in the dust. But more people are going to be coming here, which is why we need to make sure, that's a good thing because of the workforce, but we need to make sure that we have the infrastructure, we have the housing, we have the classrooms for their kids, and we have the jobs for them.
Absolutely. So with over $15 billion in investments coming into the Carolina core, how's the region managed to diversify from its traditional industries like the ones you just mentioned, textiles, tobacco, furniture? What are some of the diversifying industries?
So it's really a couple of different things. One is advanced manufacturing, that manufacturing that requires the use of some robotics or, different skills than just manually putting something together, like they did 100 years ago. But with the more recent announcements, if you kind of start with Wolfspeed, the chip manufacturer in the Chatham mega site, and then you go up the road a little bit to Toyota, the battery manufacturer for automobiles. Then you go up to Greensboro to the airport, you've got HondaJet and you've got Boom Supersonic. We're really becoming a great hub for transportation technology because those chips are used in a lot of things. But I don't know if you remember, but during COVID at one point you couldn't buy a new vehicle. Not because of necessarily they didn't have the parts for that, but they needed chips. And I think someone in the military told me one time that like an F-35 takes like 40,000 chips or something like that.
Really?
Yeah. So, that being able to manufacture that is really key to transportation. And so I think we've become a transportation technology. And a lot of people, it's interesting, a few years ago, Toyota was looking at the same site for a traditional automobile manufacturing site and ended up being the second choice to a site in Alabama. And they're building vehicles in Alabama. And folks were obviously disappointed when that didn't happen because everybody wants a car manufacturer. But in reality, I think we won by losing that because we've got the advanced technology. We've got the technology that's going to be here for the next 50 years. Whereas that traditional, combustion gasoline engine vehicle may not be around that long.
That's fascinating. But you're spot on. So we're a leader.
That's right.
In some of these leading industries.
And the Boom Supersonic, I mean, they're building the first supersonic, commercial airliner since the Concorde.
Do you know, this is a random question. I'm curious with the Boom Supersonic, how fast will those planes fly?
I think they're designed to go over land. I think it's Mach 0.93 because you can't break the sound barrier over land. Obviously, it's disturbing to people on the ground. That's an FAA regulation. But once you get over the ocean, that's when they can go supersonic. And I don't know what the top speed is, but obviously it's faster than the speed of sound.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's going to be neat.
I can tell you that, like, if it takes you, I know it roughly takes you, depending on, headwinds and such, 5 to 6 hours to fly, say from Raleigh to London. I think it's 2 with,
oh my goodness,
with boom supersonic.
Okay, that's super fast. That's like taking a high-speed rail in Europe. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that'll be something to look forward to for sure. So we talked about talent a little bit, right? We've got amazing universities, fantastic community college system. I'm curious, what are some of the ways that you see we're keeping our talent in our state, right? Because we're always competing with the Austins or Georgia, but what are we doing in North Carolina to keep our students and our workforce here?
So one of the things, once we get somebody here, we have a good chance of keeping them. And so a lot of those students, they choose to come here for some reason. They like the climate, they like the school. You can get to the mountains and the beach. If we have 4 seasons most of the time, sometimes we have fake winter, or fake summer, but there's a lot of attributes. It's relatively affordable. Now if you're trying to buy a house, maybe in Raleigh or Charlotte, you might not think that, but all in all, North Carolina is a really affordable place to live. And we have good infrastructure, even though if you're sitting out in traffic at 5 o'clock, some places you might not think there's enough lanes, but in general, try going to Atlanta or Dallas or someplace like that. It's a lot better, or DC. So we have a lot of those advantages. The other thing we're doing is in the Carolina Core, we've got a campaign called More in the Core, where it's really a lot of social media driven advertising targeted to specific areas, people in the Northeast, or maybe it's a little colder than it is here, and there's more job opportunities here.
Oh, interesting.
To let them know of the job opportunities here, but also what a great place it is to live. If you like outdoor recreation, there's no place in North Carolina you can't go find a trail or a place to ride your bike or a place to go hiking or fishing or swimming.
Is that timed with the season? So if it's freezing cold in Boston, someone in Boston may get an ad saying, "Hey, the Carolina Core, it's 75 and sunny."
Yeah, I don't think we hyper focus that much, but that's a great idea, Valerie.
I like it.
I'm going to take that one back.
So we talk about innovation, and it seems like that's a huge part of the Carolina Core's mission, right? We talked about some of those innovative industries. How is innovation a driver in keeping this region, particularly the Carolina Core, competitive both at a national and global scale?
Well, I think you just have to look at the companies that are here, the ones that I've just talked about. They're all like, Wolfspeed is really the world's largest manufacturer of the type of chips they make, which is the most advanced type of chips. They were started, out of NC State and moved over to Durham, and this is a big manufacturing facility for them in Chatham County. Toyota, has been a leader in automotive for decades worldwide, and the fact that they would choose to put their most advanced manufacturing, in North Carolina says something. And then HondaJet is another great example. The first aircraft by the Honda company, which is very well known for cars, that was designed and built and approved in Greensboro. Nowhere else.
That's amazing.
And part of it is, again, our great university system. We have so many universities that produce great engineers, and we have another company that's in Greensboro that you would have heard of and you've seen if you drove by on 40. But Volvo trucks and Mack trucks, they employ about 3,000 people in their campus right there, right off 40, and you never know it. And more than half of them are engineers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they do all their R&D, worldwide there.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And engineering jobs are pretty good jobs.
They're fantastic jobs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. I'm curious, real estate and infrastructure with a lot of growth in the area. We're seeing a lot of construction pop up. What are some big projects on the horizon? I'm curious if there's anything that you can share with us that might be coming up in the Carolina core construction wise.
There's nothing that's been publicly announced recently, but there are still a lot of great industrial sites, several hundred acres and even more than 1,000 acres at the Greensboro Airport. They have close to 900 acres. And of course, that's a little unique because they're not just looking for anybody. They wouldn't put a car manufacturer there. It's someone who needs access to the airport. And, the economic development professionals, tell me at any given time, there's, dozens of leads, companies looking at particular sites with various degrees of serious interest. It's hardly a week goes by but that there's not some announcement that somebody is going to locate here or expand.
Absolutely. No, you're so right. There's so many exciting announcements. I'm curious.
I forgot to mention one.
I know.
In Lexington, Siemens is going to make all the new passenger rail cars.
Are they really?
Yeah. So they announced that about a year and a half ago. So we've got, EVs, chips, supersonic aircraft, trains,
planes, and automobiles.
Exactly. That's right.
I'm curious. I hate looking back with the pandemic, and we talk about COVID, but I couldn't help but ask, the work from home.
Right.
I know in Raleigh, we're starting to see people return back to the office. Durham, Charlotte, everywhere, people are slowly coming back to the office. Is that the trend across the Carolina core, or is there still a hybrid of work from home, or people starting to come back to the office with these industries in particular? I feel like perhaps they never stopped working in the office, right? Because the jobs had to continue.
Right. It really depends on, what type of job you've got. If you're an office worker, you have a lot more flexibility. And a lot of companies have basically, said, what works for our employees, what works for us, we need you in the office so many days a week, but you can work from wherever the rest of the time. And a lot of people have made that work. Some people love that. Some people crave being with other people. So it's just, to me, it's kind of like finding that right mix. A manufacturing job, it's hard to do from home. And so if you're in one of those jobs where you've got to be there and assemble something, you can't do that remotely. So that almost always, stayed there. They just had to take appropriate precautions, during COVID.
Yeah. Well, correct me if I'm wrong. I think I read on your website there's 7,700 acres of land ready for development in the Carolina core.
Yeah, I think that's actually probably an understatement, because there's land out there that we don't even know about that people are assembling at times. So
sure. So what's the outlook on the growth in that region with all of that land?
Oh, I think it's as we were discussing earlier about really the core urban areas and that urban corridor growing together. I think you're really going to see between Raleigh and Charlotte, things are going to start filling in. And at its own pace, there will be smaller communities that like to keep their flavor, I hope you can always go to Lexington and get great barbecue and, have that experience. But there's a lot of industry out near the interstate near Lexington. So,
yeah, it's funny. Speaking of barbecue, with us being in North Carolina, there's such strong feelings one way or the other with barbecue, but we recently had Lexington barbecue, and I've got to tell you, it was fantastic.
Had you not had it before?
I had not, because I'm from the eastern part of the state. I grew up in Wilmington, and it was always vinegar-based, but that Lexington barbecue, it was delicious.
Well, I've got a very strong opinion, and that is all barbecue is good.
That's right.
Yeah. I've had it from the west to the east, and I've not found any I don't like.
That's right. Well, let's talk about target industries and business sectors. So we talked a little bit about aerospace, the life sciences, tech. Are there any specific success stories that you'd like to highlight?
Well, you talk about life sciences. Winston-Salem, for example, they have the innovation corridor, there, and they've really, focused on, the great work coming out of Wake Forest University and Baptist Hospital. They're literally growing human body parts there, which is crazy. I mean, they can grow an ear to replace your ear.
That's wild.
Yeah, and so biomedical pharma, is a real growth area. I think for all of North Carolina. You obviously see a lot of that in the Triangle as well. But that's a particular growth area. Again, advanced manufacturing. We've had a lot of warehouse and distribution because we have an excellent interstate and rail system and airports. So you see a lot of folks decide to put their main distribution center for 3 states in that area because it's very convenient and centrally located. Publix is a good example of that. Publix, about 6 or 7 years ago, started a very large facility where they not only warehouse and ship out foods, like cereal and things like that, but Publix makes a lot of food. I don't know if you've ever had their ice cream, but it's fabulous.
It's fabulous. The premium ice cream.
Oh yeah. So, but they manufacture that food in that large facility right outside of Greensboro.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Learn
something new every day.
That's right.
Well, that's good to know. I need to stay away from that ice cream, though. It's delicious. We talk about tech a lot. Is there a partnership, I'm just curious, between the Carolina Core and any of the research that's taking place at the Research Triangle Park and RTP?
Yeah, absolutely. And even closer to home, we have a great partner in North Carolina A&T University.
Yes.
They're the largest historically Black college and university in the country. They have an incredible engineering program, and all of these companies that come to the Carolina Core, they say one of the reasons they came is because of the partnership with A&T. They can get their students in there as interns, and hopefully then they'll want to come work there. And you've got a great pipeline of talent. And it's not just, even if you have a manufacturing company, they still need accountants. They still need business and finance people. They need HR people. So
Yes.
It's not just the engineers. It's an ecosystem within a business.
Absolutely. I'm really glad you mentioned NCA&T because that's a great shout out, and their talent is phenomenal. We participate in their career fair, and we are constantly impressed with the students that are graduating or within the program at A&T. They're just top talent.
It is a great school, and it is. It was under the radar for a long time, but I don't think it is anymore. Thank goodness.
Yeah, the secret's out.
Yeah, exactly.
So Winston-Salem's Innovation Quarter, we just talked about with the life sciences, but what's happening in terms of any other breakthrough technologies that you're seeing? Is there anything cutting edge? You mentioned Wake Forest Baptist with the body parts.
Right. I think you're really going to see a lot of battery technology being developed. There are already a number of smaller companies that are working on different types of battery technology. And I think they're attracted there because Toyota's there.
Yeah, we're very excited to have Toyota in North Carolina.
Absolutely. And improving, that battery technology is going to be key to long-term success because you need to get it to the point where everybody, it doesn't matter whether it's your phone or your car, you want it to charge faster and last longer.
Absolutely.
And be lighter.
Yes.
So all of that is a technology-driven thing. And then, of course, with batteries, it's complicated. You've got heat you've got to deal with. So there's a lot of opportunity for new innovation there.
So when we spoke originally, the hurricane hadn't taken place.
Correct.
And now we've seen the huge impact and toll that Hurricane Helene has taken on Western North Carolina. And I know you've played a huge part in trying to support residents in the western part of the state, rebuilding it, right? Especially looking at the infrastructure and everything in between. Thank you for doing that. Can you please share with our listeners what you've seen and what the impact is going to be?
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost hard to describe, and I tell people, as bad as the pictures are, seeing it in person, it's 10 to 100 times worse, the devastation. But I couldn't be, in my role as chairman of the Board of Transportation, I've traveled a lot with our Secretary of Transportation, our senior engineers, the governor, Secretary Buttigieg, Senators Tillis and Budd, in all parts of Western North Carolina that have been impacted. And I couldn't be prouder, A, of our NCDOT family, because we had folks who, were out there working the next day who lost their homes, out trying to repair roads. And I saw that not just with our folks, but with a number of folks. We stopped one day, at a roadblock, and we were looking at a road that had been washed out, and there was a highway patrolman there, and he told us he'd lost his home.
Oh, wow.
And he's out there working, and so our state is blessed to be full of people like that. And really one of the most heartwarming things, in addition to all the people coming, from other parts of the state or even out of state to help, seeing our people help each other, neighbors helping neighbors was really amazing. We got the opportunity to visit a lot of small communities where people were just pitching in to help their neighbor who had been impacted. So there's always some silver lining in every cloud, but the devastation is really hard to believe. I heard some of our emergency management people describe it as a hurricane, because it almost had the combination of damage of a traditional hurricane with the water and the wind, and an earthquake with the way the earth moves. Because there's actually a really great 2-minute video if you go on the Weather Channel and just search why was Helene so bad. There's about a 2-minute video that explains how much rain they got. Just normal, storm came through for 2 days beforehand. And then you got this hurricane coming up from the Gulf that, because of the way the mountains are shaped and it came in that direction, it just dumped, all the water right there. So you had a tremendous amount of water, all within about 4 days. And obviously you have a lot of devastation around homes and businesses and roads that are in lower areas near creeks and rivers. But what was really astounding is just people up on the side of the hill that their house just goes away.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah. And it's interesting how interconnected everything is, because one of the amazing things about that particular storm was not only, the transportation challenges, but, it took out water and sewer systems. It took out electricity, which that's not uncommon in a hurricane. I mean, we're blessed with great electrical companies and crews. They get back in there and get it, but they can't, fix the power line unless we can fix the road for them to get there first. And along with that, and this was what was really sort of unprecedented, was communications were very difficult, because the cell towers, they have generators and stuff, but they eventually run out of fuel if you can't get to them to refuel. But importantly, a lot of those cell towers, they don't just go from tower to tower. They go down to a landline that then goes somewhere and ties into a network. And when that landline gets washed out along with the road, then the tower's effectively out of business. And so my parents, still live outside of Boone. And when I had actually been traveling out of state, and I came back early to get there Saturday morning early, and their electricity had been out. It just came back on, but they didn't have self-service or internet or any sort of communication, landline or anything, for about 5 days.
Oh, wow.
Which is really bizarre, because I would drive somewhere, like into Boone, had okay cell coverage, not great, and my phone would just all of a sudden blow up with 30 text messages that people had been sending me that I couldn't get. It was like I was in a blackout zone.
Wow. Well, I hope your parents are okay and everything, all the powers.
Yeah, and they did not have any property damage. They were very fortunate.
Yes, they were.
I mean, I don't think I know anybody that didn't have some trees down, but there were, the trees that they lost were, not in the way and didn't fall on anything. But there are a whole lot of people that have lost everything. And I hope, 3 things. One, we're going to rebuild not only the road system, but, all the utilities and all. We will rebuild that. But this is really peak tourism season for the mountains, and so they sort of lost leaf season because of that. So we're encouraging folks. The governor's encouraging folks. figure out where you can go and go visit. Call ahead to make sure the place you want to go is open, but go spend money in Western North Carolina.
Yes.
That's what those businesses need.
Absolutely.
And then the third thing is, for the people that lost everything or most everything, there will still be needs 6 months from now.
Okay.
When there's some other news story that's, gotten press. So we don't need to forget about those folks. And I'm confident that a lot of people won't and will continue being generous and charitable and helping them get what they need, get back on their feet.
Yeah, absolutely. North Carolina's residents and community just really comes together, right, in tough times. And I think we heard that sentiment at the NCEDA Fall Conference that we're resilient.
Right,
and
absolutely.
so that we will continue to get through this together, but we need to help our neighbor and just continue to do it one road at a time, right? And
absolutely.
And just rebuild.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the quality of life and living in the core. You mentioned affordable housing and just a great place to live,
right.
the people, how wonderful everybody is in the Carolina core. What are some of the other things that are really attractive for families as they're looking to relocate there or live there for the work in the center of our state?
And well, I think first of all, you have great neighborhoods, and I kind of call that choices of housing. Like if you want to live in a downtown urban environment, you've got multiple places, multiple cities where you can do that all have very vibrant downtowns with great restaurants and places you can walk to. If you want to live in a more traditional in-town neighborhood, there's plenty of those. You want to live out in the suburbs, there's plenty of that. If you want to live 40 acres and have horses, you can do that and still be within 30 minutes of your job. And so I think that's a real attribute to our area that you can't necessarily get in some other parts of the state that have grown a lot faster.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's important. It is still, relatively affordable, even though housing prices have gone up just like everywhere, but it's relatively affordable, particularly compared to some parts of the state. And then I think you really have the best of all worlds because you have a lot of access to outdoor activities. There's lots of state parks, hiking, camping, canoeing, fishing, whatever you want to do. But you're also close enough. If you want to see the Panthers play, you're not that far. You're about an hour and 15 minutes from Panther Stadium where I live, and you're about an hour and 15 minutes from the Carolina Hurricanes from where I live. So lots of choices. Same with the Charlotte, the Hornets, the basketball team. So we kind of are in the middle, and we can have the best of all worlds. And if you were to tell somebody that say lived in Atlanta, it wouldn't be uncommon for them to drive an hour to see the Braves play.
You're right. We talk about traffic, but our traffic's not nearly as bad as Atlanta.
Oh yeah, I lived in Atlanta for a while, and I remember when I moved back, I moved to the Triangle, and I lived in Cary, and I was going to have dinner with some friends in Durham, and some of our neighbors said, "You're driving all the way to Durham for dinner?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's a lot easier than driving, even halfway across Atlanta to eat."
That's so true. I'm curious, you mentioned the outdoor activities. What's some of your favorite things to do in the Carolina core? Whether it's the outdoor activities or do you like to go see a show at the Tanger Performing Arts? What's some of your favorite things?
I do I think all of the entertainment at Tanger is great. We have a really good live music scene in the Carolina core in Winston, High Point, and Greensboro. We have a lot of artists that are up and coming artists that, they'll play in Nashville and then they'll come around. So there's a great live music scene. I like the outdoors. I like to hike, hunt, and fish. So there's lots of opportunities for that. I like sports. So there's no shortage of good college football, basketball, and then professional. The only thing we don't have is baseball.
That's
close.
right.
So, although my office in Greensboro overlooks the minor league baseball park. So
nice.
I can get plenty of baseball. So
you get your fix in.
I do. Although when they play the day games and they shoot the fireworks off when they hit a home run, it does startle you.
Does
you're
it
sitting
really?
there typing, you're like,
So before we let you go, Mike, we would love to ask you a few outlook questions. So how do you see the Carolina core continuing to grow both 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and maybe even beyond?
Well, I think the momentum is there, and I think it's going to continue. We call ourselves really the third economic engine for North Carolina, with Charlotte and Raleigh being the other two. And I think we have a lot of space to grow there. We have a lot of sites and opportunities. We have the workforce. We have great places to live. So I think the sky's the limit. I think companies are going to continue to expand and locate there. Families are going to want to move there and live there because you can really take advantage of all the activities. I think North Carolina in general will continue to be one of the fastest growing states, and certainly our share will be moving to the Carolina core.
And then for businesses in North Carolina or beyond, or entrepreneurs who are in this market, if they want to get involved with the Carolina core, what's the best spot for them to get involved? Do they go to the Piedmont Triad Partnership, or what's the best spot?
We have a website. If you just Google Carolina core, it'll come up, and that will direct you where to go. It's really amazing when you say businesses from around North Carolina. It's crazy to me how many businesses we have from across the country that say, hey, there's a lot going on there. We want to be there and take part in it. And so it's not just North Carolina businesses, which we love, but it's businesses from other states who really see the growth and the economic success that North Carolina as a whole is having. I mean, it's not an accident that North Carolina was the top state to do business 2 years in a row.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I liked what we heard at the NCEDA conference, right? They had to be generous, and someone else had to get first place, which is why.
Right. There might have been some tweaking in the scoring there. It was a very close second to Virginia.
Right. So, yes. We'll be back on top again. I'm not worried about that. Well, last but not least, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you, but with this being Constructing the Carolinas and it being a construction podcast, I'd love to ask you if there was anything you'd love to see be built in North Carolina or the Carolina core, what would that be?
Wow, that's a great question. I think, we have a great combination already of, like I said, we've got urban areas, we've got in-town neighborhoods, suburban areas. I think we have great sports stadiums. If you go west, we've got equestrian facilities at Tron. I would say probably, we could use some more hotel conference space at the coast. Traditionally, that's been something that's been lacking. There's not been enough of those for some very large conferences. And in the mountains, typically Asheville is the place you can do that, although they're hurting right now. So as a matter of fact, the conference that you mentioned that you and I were at, it was supposed to be in Asheville and had to be relocated to Greensboro because of the hurricane. I think if we continue to build those amenities that people want, where they can live, work, and play, then we'll see a lot of success.
Well, thank you so much for your time. This was a lot of fun. I loved getting to know you more and hearing more about the Carolina core and all that you're doing. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for what y'all are doing. Your company has been a great partner for NCDOT and a lot of businesses for many, many years. We couldn't build anything without great partners. And so I appreciate this work that y'all are doing to educate people about different parts of the construction industry.
Well, thank you so much. A huge thank you to Mike Fox for sharing his insights on the Carolina core and how it's shaping the future of our state's economy. If you're curious about the Piedmont Triad Partnership and the Carolina core, be sure to head to nccarolinacore.com to learn more about upcoming projects and opportunities. And of course, thank you for tuning in to Constructing the Carolinas. To make sure you never miss an episode, hit that follow button in your favorite podcast app or subscribe on YouTube. As always, check out what Barnhill is doing to keep up with building in our communities by visiting barnhillcontracting.com and follow us on LinkedIn. This podcast is edited and produced by Earfluence. I'm your host, Valerie Bono, and as we continue to grow and innovate across the Carolinas, I hope you inspire to build something meaningful. whether that's a career, a community, or a new way of thinking. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.